A little over 40 years ago, I was in London at the London School of Economics, studying for my LLM in law course. I shared a small apartment with two of my friends, and we had a common pastime. It was our common habit that on Sunday we had some communal cooking, and what we did was we would make a whole bowl of ground rice and a big pot of stew, and we would spread some old newspapers on the floor. The floor was carpeted, and we would put the ground rice on the left, the pot of stew on the right, and about 4 or 5 of us would gather around it. It was our Sunday afternoon commonwealth of weekend pleasure, culinary style. And we would all go at it. Oh, I learned a few lessons from that. One of them, just as an aside, for example, I learned how to quickly get into the pot of stew once the temperature was down enough to take my piece of meat and hide it, because we also learned that if you want to be sure that you had what you needed, you should grab it on time. And that was something that was fun. It was fun because my colleague who used to do the cooking, though a guy, would put many women to shame with his culinary skills. So we enjoyed that. I look forward to that Sunday afternoon all the time. Fast forward 45 years later, almost, and I'm practicing mediation, and my mind flashes back to that pot of stew. I can almost see it simmering before me with its allure of, condiments and stuff like that. And it struck me that in that pot of stew was a lesson for us, a practical explanation of what mediation grants us. You see, in that pot of stew, all of us were satisfied. But amongst us, I mentioned there were between 4, 5, or 6 of us, sometimes 7. We had colleagues of ours who, for example, did not like meat. They preferred fish. They would not touch meat, almost religiously. No matter how much meat you put in the pot of stew, they wouldn't touch it. They would go for the fish. Some loved the snails. Sometimes we had other things in there, but everyone had something for himself. Now, how does that relate to mediation? This is what it struck me as. You see, when two parties or more are in conflict and they have a dispute, the most important thing usually isn't who is right or who is wrong, but that certain interests and preferences sometimes have come into conflict. And the way of meeting those interests or addressing those conflicts are at variance one with the other, and a conflict develops. And what mediation therefore really thrives at, and what it really sells, is that we are able to go beyond just right, wrong. I mean, this is basic elementary mediation. We go beyond just what is right or wrong. We begin to look at what is it that each person needs to have to satisfy him, and yet all within the same context of everyone being satisfied, relationships maintained, the camaraderie preserved, just like all 5 or 6 of us gathered around that pot of stew and the bowl of ground rice. And it strikes me that, when we finish a proper mediation, what I refer to always as authentic mediation, what we're really saying is that the process enables us to prepare that pot of stew. That pot of stew is enjoyed by everyone. It tastes nice to everyone. All of us sit around it in friendship, in unity, in camaraderie, and yet that pot of stew does not represent the same for everyone, and yet everyone is satisfied by it. Take the pot of stew as the mediation settlement agreement. everyone is satisfied by it, but what everyone gets out of it is not necessarily the same. The man who loves his meat gets his meat. The man who wants his fish gets his fish. The man who wants his snails gets his snails. The man who wants his shrimps gets his shrimps. He's not in conflict with the meat man because that the meat does not satisfy his own interest. That is not what he needs. And this is what the pot of stew teaches. That when we come to mediation, when we come to the resolution of conflict, the reason why we emphasize the fact that we're not really looking for what is wrong, who is right, what is right, who did what. We're really thinking of, hey, listen, how can we cook a pot of stew that everyone, number one, will come around together, share from the same bowl of stew, be satisfied with it, walk away from there in friendship, at one with everyone else, and yet has been satisfied. So I look back to that and I said, that is what mediation must do. So when I do my mediation, what I try to look for in exploring, I'm not just looking for the facts, I'm not just looking for the stories. I'm trying as much as possible to recognize and identify what is it that is vital to that person. What is it that has become at risk for him, that has made him begin to dispute his obligations under an agreement? What does he need to satisfy him to walk away from there? It may not be the same as the other party. To try to take a piece of meat and divide it between them will not work. To take fish and divide it between them will not work. Because if both of them don't like fish, then it doesn't matter whether you give them both fish. The man who doesn't like fish is still not satisfied. But if you're able to cook a pot of stew, in which somehow you identify, oh, your issue is you like meat. Okay, fine, we'll put meat in there for you. We can put goat meat, in fact. You can have beef if that is what satisfies you. And everybody is satisfied, everybody is happy, they get what they want, and it is still done, number one, the same pot of stew. Number two, they are doing it together around the same pot, they're eating communally, they're sharing together, so their relationship is preserved. Number three, it doesn't matter if the person who loves beef eats all the beef in it. He doesn't go away as being told, oh, you are greedy, you took everything, because the other man does not even notice it, because what matters to him is the fish. But you know what it also gives us? The man uses, all of them use the same pot of stew to address the same bowl of ground rice or other thing as the case may be. So at the end of the day, what do we get? Interests are satisfied, needs are met, friendship is preserved, everybody is happy, and yet everybody has not gone away with the same thing or with the same thing in equal proportion as other things, but everyone walks away from there with a measure of satisfaction, with a measure of fulfillment. Friendships are preserved, reputation is assured, and they can walk forward in the strength of that food to continue their exploits in the world. That is the beauty of mediation. And that is why I say there are lessons for us to learn in mediation from a pot of stew. See you next time.